You're going to have this godlike power and you could just create things. So we might have a reframing, a shift in the mindset of how we think about how we generate income for ourselves. And the transition there might be a little bit painful, but I think when we cross that chasm, I think we'll see humanity flourish like never before.
Thank you, Damir, for being here. Thank you for taking out time for me. I know you're a busy man. You have a nice startup. And I understand that having a startup is like walking on fire. So thanks a lot for taking out time. How are you today?
It's good. Yeah, man. It's a good day.
Yeah,
it's sunny in Vancouver. We're in a beautiful studio.
It is, yeah.
Can't complain, man. Can't complain.
Yeah. Thank you for helping me out for everything as well with the videos and all.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man. No worries at all.
Yeah.
I'm just going to check. I always triple, quadruple check if we're recording.
Exactly. There's always this fear.
too much trauma.
Yeah, I know.
Although it's never gone wrong, but if it does go wrong, can you imagine just not having
1 hour?
It would suck.
Wasted.
I accidentally had someone out of focus for a whole hour once. That wasn't fun. But thankfully AI can actually get the job done in terms of upscaling it and defocusing or sharpening it. But like processing right now on those programs kind of sucks. So to actually do the entire podcast to fix that shot is like 1 week of processing on like a legit spec'd out MacBook.
Okay.
Anyways, your audience does not care about this.
So yeah, I think now I need to buy. I have been using Air, but that I think it's giving up now when I use it for video editing. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Maybe soon.
Yeah. So talking about your business, about your startup. So let's talk about Honeycomb AI. First, how did you thought of the idea? Where did the idea come from? And then what is it about?
Yeah. So my main business is Honeycomb AI. And I guess it's one of those businesses that I always start by telling people that I didn't want to create it. A lot of people start businesses with like this, flash of vision. Oh my God, this would be amazing. For me, it was just, this sucks.
Yeah.
And this in that equation was having to deal with dietary restrictions due to a medical condition.
Yourself?
Myself.
Okay.
In a real world environment.
Okay. Yeah.
So what that means is that just over a decade ago, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. It's an autoimmune condition. It's currently incurable. It progresses over time, and essentially, it's your body attacking itself. So, specifically in the colon. So, what comes with it are all of these restrictions, mainly dietary restrictions, some lifestyle changes that need to be made. If you have alcohol, it's going to have an impact because alcohol is an inflammatory substance. Mm-hmm. If you have caffeine, it can have an impact on it. If you have red meat, beef, it can be tough on your gut to digest it. If you have dairy, for many people with ulcerative colitis, dairy is an issue. Mm-hmm. Now, everything that I'm telling you is in particular for me. When you go to a dietitian with a diagnosis of ulcerative colitis, they will tell you that there isn't actually an established diet. There's elimination diets that you can use to figure out what works for you, what doesn't, but the actual end result day-to-day diet that you use is specific to you as an individual. So if you or someone else were to have the condition, they might have different requirements. They might be able to handle dairy. Mm-hmm. I just can't. Of course, in small doses, everything is fine. But this was like getting, hit in the side with a head, right? I was 19 when I was diagnosed. 19 in Canada, you're legal to go to clubs and party and bars, drink, all that stuff. I spent my 19th birthday in the hospital.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I spent about 10 days in the hospital and I was on a trip overseas and I came back, I left at 145 pounds and I came back to Vancouver at 120 pounds. So I was already a skinny guy to begin with, and just losing 25 pounds, emaciated. I was like a skeleton walking around. My mom could barely recognize me at the airport. Now, fast forward a bit here. I have this condition. Prior to the condition, I could eat anything that I wanted to eat. After the condition, I keep calling it a condition, but it is a disease. After having it, I mean, my world was totally shifted. It was shocked.
Is it related to Crohn's? Crohn's?
It's similar. Yeah.
Similar to that, right?
Crohn's is everything.
Okay.
Colitis is sort of like the lower intestines. Right. So where I came up with the idea is I was already doing other businesses. I had a sort of digital marketing company at the time, and I had different clients in Vancouver. And I'd go to a client meeting, and I'd finish. Maybe it started at 11, finish around 12. Okay, it's lunchtime. What am I going to have for lunch?
Huh.
And I'm looking around, and I'm like, I have this like anxiety.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh my God, what do I eat now
Yeah.
with all of these restrictions that I have? And so I'd always end up at two places. I'd end up at Subway because I can control the ingredients. I can say, okay, I know that this is here and that's there, and that's generally going to be fine. And the second place was Whole Foods. The problem was that Whole Foods is too expensive to like eat there all the time, right? At their hot buffet. And then Subway just sucks.
That is true.
So like, I'm like, these are the two options I have. It doesn't make sense because in Vancouver, right now we're in Yaletown. You have Gastown. You have, Central City Center area.
Yeah.
You have Waterfront. You have all these amazing areas with amazing restaurants, West End, whatever. I just couldn't go and find these places, find the items at these places because there was no way to do that really. The only way to do that is call them or walk in and have a conversation. It's like, do you really want to have a conversation with someone now about your newly diagnosed disease and your restrictions? It's like, I don't really want to talk to anyone. I want to, keep my headphones in, order something, and then leave and carry on with my life. If you think about food, it's just fuel. We're just fueling our body. We're just going to the gas station, right? Imagine you go into the gas station, you have to, do a little dance in front of the gas station agent before you can get in.
Yeah.
You're going to stop filling up gas.
Yeah.
You're going to take the bike.
Yeah.
So, and for a lot of people with different diseases, not just colitis, they just make their food because they can control what they can control, right? So I realized at that moment, or having accrued multiple moments like that, I was like, why isn't there a way that I could just load up an application on my phone, enter my dietary parameters, the application could then connect to all of the food that was around me at restaurants, look at their menus, look at their menu items, and then just match the two together and say, hey, Tamir, there's a salmon burger for you at this place, 2 blocks away. There's a chicken wrap for you here, 1 block away. And there's this other amazing thing like 1 kilometer away. Which one do you want? And I was like, at the time, we were...
What year was that?
That was 2016.
Okay.
That was like having those revelations in 2016. And at 2016, there was so much amazing technology that we had. And I was like, this seems so simple.
Yeah.
Well, like, it's not... Like, if you think about it, it's not landing something on the moon. It's not that complicated. So why? Why didn't this exist? And I started to, do some research and realize why. But simultaneously, I was working with a lot of restaurants in my digital marketing business. Restaurants, food companies, etc. And I had an inside look into their analytics. And their website analytics as well. And so I was looking at the website, and I was noticing that on all these restaurant websites, the top result outside of the homepage was the menu page, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. That's what that's the first thing I check.
Yeah. Because people care about the food.
Right.
That's why they're going there. Yeah. Yes, they care about if there's a view. Yes, they care about reviews. Yes, they care about, if there's parking, all that type of stuff. But ultimately, it's the food that you care about. Now, if the food is so important, why is the food in a PDF file, in a text file, in an image, where all of the data, all of the metadata that is contained in a menu is uninterfaceable, is unengageable I was thinking like, why isn't there any way to interface? If so many people care about these menu items, why is it in a PDF file, right? Imagine you're going on Expedia or Kayak or any one of these travel aggregators, and then, oh, you want to go to Hawaii? Here's a PDF of all the flights to Hawaii.
Yeah.
What kind of world is that? So on the technology adoption cycle, you have the innovators, you have the early adopters, then you have early majority, late majority, and then at the end you have laggards that come in. The laggards, or the restaurants are the laggards. They're the last people.
How do you define each of them?
Innovators are your first. So innovators are like your very first customers that love new things. They love to try new ways of doing things. They have a problem and they're willing to use your scrappiest version of your product to help solve that problem, right? So they like tinkering with things. They like, being the first ones to try something.
Yeah.
The early adopters are similar. They need something a little bit more put together. So they're not necessarily going to go into your garage, but they'll get your next product that is still not ready for the mainstream, but they're ready to give it a go, assuming most things, work. That's when you hear about minimum viable product. Your early adopters are getting the minimum viable product. Your innovators are probably not even getting a viable product, right? Yeah. It's probably like way too many things going wrong with it. And then early majority is when you start to break into a specific niche, a specific demographic, a segment of the market. So for example, when Uber was launching, they started in specific regions. Yeah. So they go to different business conferences and events, and they'd have their cars there ready to transfer people back to the airport, for example. So that would be starting to get more of those conferences, specific areas. That's like your early majority. It's like a defined market of people that you can start to build your business around. And then at some point there's a chasm. It's either between the early adopters and the early majority, or early majority and late majority. But there's a chasm there. And there's a book called Crossing the Chasm. And that chasm is like, how do you scale your business? How do you go from just a few people that are interested in it to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and there's both an art and science to accomplishing that. Now, with that all said, we can sort of skip ahead to the laggard. The rest is sort of self-explanatory. Laggards are the last people to adopt something, even if it's like yelling at them, dude, I'm gonna make your life easier. They're like, but like this gets the job done.
Just like the old people. What do old people like to do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, or people, who when the car came out, they wanted to keep riding their horse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And now if you talk about crypto, not everybody's ready for that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So crypto is still going through its adoption cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Now, seeing as how restaurants are laggards, we had to figure out how do we make their life easier? How do we build them a bridge to cross to the promised land that we want to create, right? So we realized AI has to play a part, because here's the fundamental problem. We want to annotate all menus with dietary information, with allergens, with ingredients, with dietary factors, with macronutrients, nutritional content. How do we do that if the restaurants don't want to get involved, right? Well, you could argue you could build an AI. It could do a pretty good job at predicting all of that stuff from a general corpus of knowledge that it has. So we built that. But for some segments of the market, specifically people with more severe allergies, severe conditions, the AI is not enough. They need verification from the restaurant. They need a confirmation from the restaurant that this is legitimately gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, shellfish-free, pick an allergy. So if I were to go to a restaurant with a blank sheet of paper, and I say, hey, restaurant, fill out all of your allergen information, all of your nutritional information, dietary information, when I pitch them, they're going to be like, this is a fantastic idea. But then when it actually comes down to doing it, they're going to say, I don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
What is it going to take them 2, 3, 4 hours to fill out all that information? It's just not feasible because restaurant managers and operators live extremely busy lives.
Right.
So I had to figure out how do I take that 3, 4 hours and condense it so they'd be willing to participate in this and digitize their menus and with allergen annotations. And how we did that was developing our own AI called Ramsey that predicts all of the above that I just mentioned in order to just give restaurants an output. Say, hey, this is what we've analyzed on your restaurant. Can you just double check it?
Yeah.
Now, psychologically, there's a big difference there. Do it from scratch, double check it.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you feel better also because someone has done your job, right? So you would feel better, okay, I can just go through it and validate that.
Exactly. So, so that worked. And we started selling to restaurants. That's sort of how we solved the chicken and egg problem of, if you're building a two-sided marketplace or two-sided platform, who do you get first, the supply side or the demand side? And how do you do it? How do you build it up properly so that everyone involved is getting value? Well, that's still a tough problem, but we created a product ultimately that didn't require solving that. It was a plugin for one specific restaurant where it had their menu annotated with allergy information, and it was a digital interface. So a customer going on their website could enter their dietary preferences, restrictions, and instantly find all the suitable items to eat at that particular restaurant.
Okay.
So we packaged that product up. That allowed restaurants to digitize their allergen information. It allowed to give them a hub online for all of their dietary FAQ, like, do you guys have cross-contamination issues, blah, blah, blah. So because every day they were getting questions, and they still get questions of, hey, can you do this item without gluten? Hey, is your place safe for someone with a dairy allergy? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, they get inundated with that information. Yeah. So we had one spot that answered all of those questions. It lived on their website and essentially recreated like the experience of just talking to a server. So it saved the restaurant time and it saved the consumer time because they could make a decision faster.
Right.
So for that, and in addition to all that, we gave restaurant analytics as to like, how many people with gluten inquiries looked at your menu this month, so on and so forth. So for that particular product, we had close to 1 million people use it across Canada and parts of the US.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So that product was great, but we continue to develop, and our ultimate goal is for anyone anywhere in the world to load up an app, just like my initial vision. They could add in their dietary preferences, and they could see not just one restaurant, but they could see all of the food around them. Mm-hmm. Restaurants, grocery stores, whatever you want. You want something, we'll find it for you, and it'll be suitable, and it'll automatically match you, and you can either execute an order, or you can go walk to that location, or you can make a reservation, or whatever call to action you want. So
do you get some commission when somebody places an order?
Yeah, we're sort of playing with the model. In some cases we'd get commission. Other cases we based on like subscription, freemium, whatever. A lot of these models are really dependent on how much cash do you have in the bank as a startup. Okay. The more cash you have in the bank, the more you can lower the barrier to entry for consumers, for users. And then you're getting, it's like you're optimizing for users as opposed to optimizing for revenue. That's a typical strategy. Yeah. In the Valley, we want to optimize for usage as opposed to optimizing for revenue. We will optimize for revenue later. We'll defer that. Right. So it really just depends, on the particular moment in time that you're at. You also do want to validate that people are willing to pay money for a product, because otherwise you might be getting false positives. Because if somebody wants, like everyone might say, oh yeah, you might come up with an idea, right? Let's do an example. You might come up with an idea, and you might ask your friends, hey, if I made this thing, would you do it? Would you use it? Be like, yeah, of course I'll use it. And then you give it to them for free, and then maybe they use it a couple times here and there, And then you start to realize like no one's really using this after 1 week.
Yeah.
Like they played with it a few times. They did it probably just to support me, but nobody really cares too much about it.
Yeah.
Now, one way to really figure that out is charge $200 for it and see how many of your friends want to pay for it. And then you start to hear excuses. Oh, well, I don't really need it, but I'll let you know if one of my friends needs it. That's one way to tell. So that's price elasticity testing, right? See, what are people willing to pay for where they get value out of it? Now, it might be that $200 is too much. For $20, they might want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So figuring that out as a company is part of your like marketing matrix, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't want to drone on too much about the entire business plan of Honeycomb because it's long but that's the vision.
Yeah.
That's how we started. And
but what is the accuracy on it? Like how accurate will I get if I'm buying something, if I'm planning on buying food?
Yeah.
How accurate will it be?
Well, the accuracy is relative to your needs. Okay. So I'll give you an example for me. I don't want to have anything that is like very heavily that dairy is contained heavily in it, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's a couple of sprinkles of Parmesan on it, I don't have a severe allergy to dairy, right? Okay. So nothing bad is going to happen. I just know that too much dairy will be an issue. So right there is a difference between me and someone who has a severe dairy allergy.
Okay.
And then there's a difference between me and that person and a third person who just doesn't like the taste of dairy.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you sort of these risk profiles, if you will, or severity profiles. And we've included that in our applications. It's called a severity index, where you can choose to avoid an ingredient, you can choose to have an intolerance to an ingredient, or you can choose to have a severe allergy to the ingredient.
That makes sense.
Depending on your selection, you will see different data in the app. So when you're asking me what's the accuracy, well, the baseline accuracy of our predictions is pretty good. It's like 90% of the time is pretty accurate for the average person. We don't necessarily know if that particular day the chef decided to cook this dish with butter.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody can know that.
Yeah.
You can have the greatest AI of all time.
But the human error might be there.
But in the same way, your autopilot, for example, are the typical ingredients that are contained in a dish, right? But every once in a while, you don't know what the chef is going to do because there's a human involved in it. So as long as there's humans involved, there's always the ability for things to and the capacity for things to go wrong, right? Most of the time they don't, right? Most of the time you don't hear about restaurants killing people. Most of the time you don't hear about airplanes crashing, right? These are anomalous situations. So while the accuracy that we have is 90%, how do we accommodate for that last 10% of uncertainty, if you will? We do that by getting information, acquiring information on restaurants of how they actually prepare dishes, right? So if I call a restaurant, I say, hey, do you accommodate someone who has severe celiac, right? Severe celiac is sort of a redundancy, but it just means that someone who has a severe gluten allergy, right? Do you accommodate someone like that? And they might say, what's celiac?
Exactly.
What's gluten allergy?
Yeah.
Now, if they say that, I know this is probably not a good spot to order food from, even if they have on the menu a gluten-free dish. And by the way, this exists.
Exactly.
Like restaurants will sometimes do this thing called, for lack of a better word, virtue signaling. Okay, where we want to accommodate for people, but we don't actually care, right? I'm not calling out restaurants or anything, but it's just a reality.
That's how businesses work, right? You want
Yes.
more business.
Exactly.
Everybody wants it.
But they don't necessarily understand what it means to accommodate someone with a gluten allergy. So that actually does ultimately a disservice to the customer because they see gluten-free, but then the kitchen is not prepared for gluten-free. They're cooking it in the same frying pan as a dish that had gluten in it. That's really where the problems occur. Because if it says gluten-free, we're going to register, our AI is going to know it's gluten-free. Or if it's just, made with a rice noodle and not a wheat-based noodle, we're going to know that, right? It just, okay, but how is it prepared? If we know how it's prepared, that means we have a leg up in terms of the accuracy here. And so we feed our model that information about the restaurant. So that gives an additional indicator to the user that, hey, this place is suitable for you. They've indicated that they can accommodate even people like you who have severe allergies, and you should be good going there. Now that maybe takes the certainty from 90% to like 98%. Now you have 2% uncertainty, right? These numbers are all, roughly speaking, but 2% uncertainty is pretty good. Yeah. Because again, you're not going to get, even if you talk to them on the phone, maybe you talk to them today, you talk to one guy, that guy's not there tomorrow, it's another guy there, so you don't know. So what we tell everyone is always double check with the restaurant before ordering, whether it's in person or it's through the app. Through our app, for example, we will send your dietary information and instructions to the restaurant with every order if you have a severe allergy. We will also call the restaurant on your behalf to triple check. So there's a lot of safety protocols and measures that we put in place. That's a very long-winded answer, but I think it's important because accuracy is very important for people.
Exactly. Because I think most of the people who would be using that would be who have some restrictions on the diets. Correct. Or maybe who want to take care of it. Say someday I've started gymming. I start gymming and then I want to take care of what I'm eating.
Right.
That's when I would take care of it.
Yeah.
So do you think it can replace a nutritionist?
No, I don't think it should replace a nutritionist, but it's a tool for the nutritionist to, the nutritionist tells you, hey, eat more of this, eat less of that. Okay, now, get out of my office, go outside to the real world. What's your compass? Are you going to now go and manually parse every single menu that you see? No, you just use Honeycomb as your automatic menu parser. Honeycomb, it combs through all the menus for you, and it's giving you the recommendations. We take, when you're searching for something, essentially you're doing a practice of creating short lists, right? For anything, whether you're buying shoes or buying clothes or buying a new camera or buying a new phone or going on a vacation. Everybody creates short lists, right? When you're ordering food, you're also creating a short list. You say, do I feel like Thai? I also feel maybe like Indian. Oh, maybe actually I want Italian. So you start looking at, 3, 4, 5, 6 different restaurants. And so you have to go to those restaurants. Then you have each menu you have to look at, decipher it. Depending on your restrictions, you might have to call the restaurant. So you have to do that a bunch of times just to have, let's say, in a virtual basket, maybe at the end, you're like, from this place, I'm going to order maybe those 2 dishes. From that place, I might order 3 dishes. From that place, I could order 2. And now you have like a short list of 10 to 20 items that you could potentially order. And, excuse me, only then do you actually make your decision of what do I actually want to eat. We just fast forward that experience and take you right to the short list. So forget all of the hunt. We'll hunt it down for you. We're not going to go and actually decide for you, but we'll make it way faster for you to get to that decision. And Google doesn't do it for you, and TripAdvisor doesn't do it for you, and Yelp doesn't do it for you, and DoorDash doesn't do it for you, and Uber Eats doesn't do it for you. Honeycomb does it for you. And then you go on your way.
What I'm just thinking is, have you ever thought of adding a cloud kitchen to it so that people can directly order it from you?
So right now we're connected to every single cloud kitchen in North America.
Okay.
We have nearly every restaurant in North America because we're plugged in to the data of Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats, Grubhub, basically everyone except DoorDash. And we do this through third-party API that we connect right into. And so when you order from Honeycomb, it's delivered to you by an Uber driver or a Grubhub driver or a Skip the Dishes driver.
That is smart.
Yeah. So that includes, they already get the cloud kitchens for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have to open your own. You just have tied up with them. Exactly. And they can take care of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's always smart to outsource it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we do deal with restaurants directly as well.
Okay.
But we're also, still in the process of raising more money to do more things. Our idea is expansive. Our idea is quite huge. We want you to do this anywhere in the world. You're going to Milan for a fashion show, for a fashion conference. You just landed there. You've never been to Italy before. Open up your phone. We'll find you something. You're going to New Zealand.
Yeah.
You're going to wherever. We want this to be global.
Yeah.
In multi languages. in
Interesting.
like that's really the vision here. And for something like ChatGPT, these models are too big, too clunky, too slow to do what we're trying to do in terms of real time. Because with menus, you're dealing with real time information, right? Because menus can change, so on and so forth. They could be updates, price updates, ingredient updates, etc. So we always get the real time menu. So with the real time menu, there has to be a real time analysis. But how long does the real time analysis take? Because if it takes 2 minutes to analyze 50 items that the menu has across, don't forget, it's not just like checking one parameter if there's gluten in it. It's checking gluten, mushrooms, shellfish, whatever your restrictions are. So from a pre-processing perspective, you can't process sorry, I'm getting
Yeah, no worries.
people are bothering me. Real time, yeah. So trying to do this analysis in real time is actually challenging at the moment, because if you're to use a GPT-4 or take whichever large language model you want, even fine tune, it doesn't matter. It's going to take too much time, create too much latency for the end user. So Ramsey is specialized and designed for this specific use case. It's more of a scalpel and less of a blunt instrument. So it does it fast, within a fraction of a second. It analyzes the menu for you, because that's its only job. It can't spit you out a poem on Shakespeare, but it can get the job done for this particular thing. Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, so that's it. Yeah.
All right. So, but then what brought you into, okay, that answers that also. Interesting. That's an interesting story. I want to talk about it, but then talk about the business and all, but then we have to talk about other things as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about in the business, and I think if we keep going deeper into it, it might get too intricate for people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Perhaps we could do that another time, or people can just go and check it out for themselves, and if they have questions, they can always connect, reach out,
Yeah.
and do research in their own right. But I think from the business lesson standpoint, I've touched on a few things so far, and maybe you want to take it in a different direction.
Yeah. What I also think is that most of the audience would be from India.
Okay.
Or maybe Indians, I guess. That's what I'm guessing. I don't know, because I've just started. So what I feel about India and Indians, what I feel personally, that we are not too much aware of the things we are eating.
Okay.
We have never been even we have reached that stage where we have started reading the labels.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how much sugar? Otherwise, I would never check. Oh, is that how much sugar I'm having right now?
Yeah.
Is that fat? It has never.
Yeah.
And then my parents have been so loving. Hey, what cookies do you want me to get today? It was never like no cookies or no that. But then, what do you want me to go? Let's go cookie shopping. Let's get some chips.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess internet has played a lot of awareness in people's life. So, and this is the right time to take it there for, if not just for restrictions, but for awareness of, okay, I should eat that.
Yeah.
That would fulfill my diet. And
Yeah. And listen, the ingredients and the actual contents of what you're eating in India might be different than what you're eating in Canada. Everyone knows really that the dairy in Europe is different than the dairy in North America. Some people have no issue with the dairy in Europe. They have big problems with the dairy in North America. The dairy in India will also have differences as well.
Yeah.
So even when you just move places, you're like, oh, I didn't have these gut problems back at home, but now I'm here and I have gut problems.
Yeah. That's what I've been listening to the people who have moved from India.
Yeah.
That they have been experiencing a lot of allergies.
Right.
Because of, I don't know what the reason is, maybe water or some food.
I think it's just over-processed here. A lot of foods are over-processed. They're everything here, it's late-stage capitalism.
Yeah.
Make money at all costs.
And you know what the notion is in India? That in the West, everything is neat and clean. Everything is nice and fresh. Like we think that everything nice is going to the West.
Yeah, I think maybe like Vancouver Island.
Okay. Yeah.
You have a lot more locally sourced, anything that's a bit away from the urban centers, right? Probably the interior of BC or
But is it
islands.
expensive or no? Or
I
is
don't
it
know. I mean,
affordable?
probably not. I mean, everything is expensive,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the next question.
Okay.
So, how is a startup business like we were having a conversation last time about entrepreneurship and this startups and how it is different from businesses.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a traditional business versus
Traditional
a
business,
startup.
yes. Then like we were talking about for
Right.
startup, you're walking in the unknown.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll give you my definition, which I think is the correct definition. There's people who might disagree with me, but they're wrong. Okay.
Okay.
Um, a startup itself is not just any new business. Otherwise, every single business would be a startup. Otherwise, your real estate corporation
It's also a startup.
is also a startup,
Yeah.
which is one of the least riskiest investments you can make. So that doesn't really make sense. Otherwise, you just call it a business. Why this term startup, right? Why the connotation of startup is this thrilling, exciting thing? Startup typically is synonymous with innovation. What is innovation? Doing something new that typically hasn't been done before, or it's an upgrade on the incumbent. Now, in order to do something new, you typically have to apply the scientific method. You have to create hypotheses to test out ideas to see if they'll work or not. Just because something's new doesn't mean it's useful,
Yeah.
right? So inherent in that is uncertainty. Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? That, I think, is the fundamental difference between a startup and a small business. Now, someone might argue, is a cafe, is a restaurant a startup? Because so many of them fail. So isn't there inherent uncertainty in there? No, there isn't inherent. Of course, there's the inherent uncertainty of business. Where are you going to get your customers, blah, blah, blah. But there are established formulas for growing a coffee shop, for growing a restaurant, for growing a bakery. Okay, there's established models. The reason for that is because there's thousands or tens of thousands of these businesses that are successful around the world. There's many books on it. There's many mentors that you can get. All sorts of content that exists, right? There's an established model. And for more evidence, if you go to a bank, you say, I want to open up a traditional business, you have a chance of getting a loan from them. You have your business plan because there's precedent. If you go with your startup's business plan, they'll say, I've never seen this before, and you don't get funded. Because you don't really hear about startups getting funded from banks
Yeah.
and traditional financial institutions. Okay, so these are a few reasons. Now let's go to a startup. Or back to a cafe for a second. Back to a restaurant. People need to eat, right? So you're the problem is people are hungry, or people are have an addiction to caffeine, and they need their hit or they need their food, right? So those problems are established problems, right? You have that problem every day. You wake up, you're hungry, okay? So feeding people is an established problem with established solutions. Now, there are cases where startups are created with hypothetical problems, not necessarily real problems, or problems that need to be isolated that aren't served yet, okay? So it might be the case that, like take Airbnb, for example. Airbnb was solving an established problem. People need a place to stay, right? But their solution had a lot of uncertainty in it, okay? The solution that had uncertainty was that would people stay at a stranger's house? Would strangers stay at strangers' houses? And if you look at investor, it was released after like communications between the startup and the investors that were circulated. People were very doubtful. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why? That's like so weird. Like, invasion of privacy. I don't want strangers in my home. What the heck is this? Well, it turned out that there was huge demand in the market that was underserved. Okay, there were a lot of people that were willing to do this, and there were a lot of people that were willing to stay. Of course, there's still people that to this day, oh, I never want to get strangers in my house, but they underestimated the number of people, or the investors underestimated the number of people that would be willing to do that. So that's where you have innovation on the solution. No one had ever done that before. Marriott International had not done it. All of these big hotel names, they had opportunities to do that idea. They were the kings of accommodation. And
But then won't they think that, oh, if we start doing that, why would somebody come to the hotel to be there?
well, yeah, that's sort of the scarcity thinking.
Yeah,
right?
just like when it was Sony who was scared of putting the content online when Spotify was coming in.
Right.
So they were really skeptical about it, or who would buy the CDs and how will they make money
Right.
out of it?
Yeah. So the truth is, I mean, in that case, you're talking about a technological leap, right? Airbnb was not a technological leap. Airbnb was like a behavioral leap. That was just like one of those ideas that people didn't think would work that ended up working. The problem when you when you try to find these ideas, these not contrarian necessarily, but Peter Thiel in 0 to 1, he talks about how what's the one idea that people disagree with you on, right? If a lot of people disagree with you on it, maybe you're onto something, right? That's sort of his, one of his clues. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but the problem is that it's like the fine line between genius and crazy. That's where the scientific method comes in, where you actually have to go into the market, you have to run tests, you have to see if this is actually feasible in the market. So that's what a startup is. Startups are about finding problems that are underserved, finding innovative ways to solve a problem, looking at things from new perspectives, thinking outside of the box. And unfortunately, that comes with a lot of failure, because a lot of times it's not right. And a lot of people become married to solutions and not married to problems. So what I mean by that is, take Apple Vision Pro, or forget Apple Vision Pro. Even before that, Google Glass a decade ago, right? Do you remember Google Glass?
A little, yes.
It was like a little augmented reality glasses.
That was like 10 years back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the problem with Google Glass is that people would take Google Glass and they thought this is the future. Everyone's going to wear these things.
I remember that now.
I'm going to build applications on it. I'm going to build startups around it.
Yeah.
And they were looking for applications to throw onto the Google Glass. And they were realizing nobody really wants to wear this. So you had a lot of startups in that era use a solution that they were trying to retrofit onto problems, right? Like, maybe you could use this for construction. Maybe you could use this for this. Maybe you could use this for that. When the people weren't demanding the Google Glass as a solution. So that's a problem that a lot of startup founders fall into, is getting married to the future of this particular solution, but not actually having real applications that actually solve problems for the end users. So it's more important to get intimate with the problem, with the consumers. That's why Sam Altman, Y Combinator, their main tagline says, build something people want. And after that, they just say, talk to users as much as you can. Right? Don't talk to the technology. Don't focus too much on the technology. Focus on the users. What people need.
Yeah.
And everything that I just said, everything, the last like 10 minutes, is all really specific to startups. You can optimize existing businesses with the same thinking. That's how you do it, right? There might be underserved services. There might be underserved people want certain services that you're not providing in traditional businesses. Maybe at cafes, people are also looking for I don't know, books or something, or they're looking for, whatever. Maybe they're looking for a pod that they can make phone calls in, and
Yeah.
all these different like enhancements that you can make. But the fundamental business is traditional,
Yeah.
right? With startups, the fundamental business hasn't been done before. The models maybe have been done before. You can sort of pick and choose a model and all that type of stuff. But typically, a big hitting business in the startup land is something very innovative like that.
About the Google Lens, one thing I want to ask.
Yeah.
Do you think it was like it wasn't the time for the Google Lenses, the Google glasses, right? What was it?
Google Glass.
Google Glass.
Yeah.
So maybe it was early in the time, or maybe what if it has come now?
Yeah.
It would have still worked better.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing that the Meta Ray-Bans are taking
Yeah.
off.
Exactly.
They're still not taking off to the point where you're seeing a bunch of people walking. Like you're wearing an Apple Watch, for example. That's wearable technology that did take off, right? I'm wearing a Garmin. So smartwatches took off. The augmented reality glasses, they're starting to come back up again. So, we'll see what happens. But yeah, sometimes if you're too early, that's a problem. And the main reason why startups fail is because they run out of money.
Yeah.
So if you're 10 years too early, you have to fund yourself for 10 years. That's tough.
Google can do that. You think?
Google can do it, but that's up to Google to do. I don't know. Like they have to make their calculations.
Also, where are you putting your resources? That also matters.
When you're a public company,
Yeah.
investors, shareholders, they're not interested in losing strategies here, right? So
Just the winning one.
yeah, I mean, for sure, Google has a lot of R&D. They create patents. They run a lot of tests, but they have to make different decisions when it comes to marketing and actually pushing something into the mainstream. Yeah,
So one question regarding the businesses,
yeah,
the old businesses like the restaurants and all.
sure.
So do you think if you do all the things right, all the restaurants could work? All the restaurants would work if you find the right blueprint and you work on it. No matter where you open the restaurant, it's going to work. The traditional businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I don't think there's like a magic wand in business, right? I think you have traditional business models, but you're talking about probabilities. Your probability. A traditional business model doesn't mean something is guaranteed to work. Traditional business model means the probability of success is significantly higher than a startup where, the probability of success is, I mean, it's extremely low, right? Like look at venture capital funds. They have to fund a bunch of companies in order for the, 5% or 1% of their fund of their investments to make the entire fund back. So, yeah, I mean the numbers just tell the real story here if you start looking at the numbers, but nothing is like you can't guarantee success with any business, but you can stack probabilities to the point where, I mean, like if Kanye West comes out with another clothing brand, like the chances of it succeeding are pretty damn close to 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
yeah. So last question.
Sure.
I know we have to talk about more things, but the last question: how do you think is the future going to look like with AI? Is it scary? Not scary? What's going to happen? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah. This is the question of the times.
Yeah.
For anyone in technology. I am an optimist for AI. I do think that there might be something. So there's this book called The Three Body Problem. I don't know if you've heard of it.
There's a Netflix series on it. Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah. So if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend the book. The books, because it's a trilogy. The books are incredible, and in the books, this is not really a spoiler, but if you're very sensitive, spoiler alert. There's this part towards the end of the 21st century. Excuse me. It's called the Great Ravine, and the Great Ravine is a time where humanity really struggles. Now, in the Three Body Problem, they struggle for different reasons. Okay, but I think AI will bring with it immense value to every human on Earth But there's going to be a transition period where it's going to greatly impact humans in a negative way because it's an adjustment. Because we have to adjust very, very fast. I mean, music right now. I just listened to a Travis Scott album that was generated completely by AI.
I know. Wow.
And I was like, this is great. It sounds like him. I mean, the changes are happening very fast. A year ago, AI generated video was terrible. A few months ago, Sora came out by OpenAI. It's incredible. What are we going to see next year? This is all happening so fast.
Yeah.
People don't even realize it. The other day, I had a 2-hour conversation with OpenAI's Sky Voice. This was before Scarlett Johansson sued them. And it was just like having like a coach in my pocket. I went on a walk. I spoke with it for 2 hours. It didn't necessarily provide any revelatory statements, but it was a sounding board. I didn't have to bore one of my friends or one of my advisors for 2 hours. I could just talk to this. I could flesh out my ideas. So for AI is going to make huge changes, huge impacts, huge waves, I think, across nearly every industry.
And we are not ready for it, are we?
I think there's one thing about humans that we can adapt. We can adapt very quickly, but it doesn't mean the adaptation is not painful. So I think we'll see layoffs. I think there will be jobs that are replaced, but there will be less jobs than when we started. Now that might be a good thing because I do think simultaneously the agency of the individual is increasing. Okay, this is the other side. People will have to learn to be more reliant on themselves and their own capacity to interact with technology. Okay, I don't really see a future where there's going to be people who can't interact with technology. Nowadays, you have sort of like the tech nerds, and those are the guys in Silicon Valley or New York or any of these tech hubs, and they're the ones building startups, and they're the ones doing all this stuff. I think everyone will have to have a proficiency in tech. Technology will be taught at schools, interacting with AIs, prompting AIs, a basic understanding of computational languages will be a requirement for people in order to just keep up with society as it is, because we're going to be dripping in technology. Now, some evidence, because who am I as a pundit on AI? Sure, I have an AI company, but it's so specialized. I'm not even remotely in the same universe as people like Sam Altman who are working, towards AGI and these incredible models. I'm very humble with respect to all of this. So I'll defer to him and what he's saying. Now, a few years ago, before this insane ramp up, this insane exponential ramp up, we heard about universal basic income, UBI. Right? Where when AI comes, everyone is going to get their allocation of revenue, of income, like this, enhanced welfare, if you will.
We can talk about it later.
Yeah, we can talk.
That's a wide topic.
It's a big topic, but I'm not really going to go down that rabbit hole. But what Sam Altman recently said was that he no longer thinks universal basic income is the solution. He thinks now everyone should have a universal basic compute. That you'll have your allocation, because it costs money to use these AI models, right? It costs money, costs energy, same thing. The universal basic compute sort of is an allocation that you have as your right, as a citizen of whichever country mandates that, to build whatever you want, to construct whatever you want, especially when AI becomes agentic. So right now, AI is not very good at executing the final task. It's good at giving you an instruction, but it doesn't actually ultimately do the execution, because there's all these complexities of dealing with different applications and blah, blah, blah. So they're working on that. That's like the big thing right now. The hot word of the times in Silicon Valley is agent, right? So when things can become agentic, what that means is that you could just prompt through ChatGPT, for example, build me an application that every day at 12 o'clock orders me a pizza. And then it does it. And then you wake up the next morning and it's 12 o'clock.
Pizza on your
and there's a pizza on your doorstep. So that is the future. And so people will have to know how to interact with it. And so your universal base. By the way, I'm not saying I agree with this.
Yeah.
But this is one idea that's come out.
It's a perception that you can have for the future.
You're going to have this godlike power that you could just create things.
I know.
So we might have a reframing, a shift in the mindset of how we think about how we generate income for ourselves. And the transition there might be a little bit painful, but I think when we cross that chasm, I think we'll see humanity flourish like never before. Yeah.
Got it. It's something crazy to talk about. Like we can have one whole podcast on it to talk about how it's gonna work.
There's a lot of podcasts about it right now.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, Samir, for coming here, for being here.
Sure.
It was a pleasure having you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.